Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters. I'm your host Mitch, glad to have you here. Here at the Commander's Quarters, we're all about Commander on a budget. Today we have an episode of Commander's 2 Cents. On episodes like these, I give you my own personal take on topics about the format in general and current news. This show and episodes like this one are possible because of viewers like you. So if you're looking for some easy ways to help support the show, make sure you like this episode and share it with friends. And make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Thank you to everyone who's already purchased our merchandise, it really does help support the channel. Another easy way to support this channel is by using our TCG Player affiliate links. So make sure that you're looking for those links in the description whenever you're buying a deck or just individual cards. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support. Today's show is going to be a continuation of a previous episode where we talked about the most powerful commanders that you can build on a budget. Part 1 talked about commanders that generate absurd card advantage, so if you haven't seen that yet, check it out here. There are many factors that make a commander powerful, and like I mentioned in that previous episode, I'm going to try to bucket these reasons as well as I can. So today, the factor that we're going to be talking about is commanders that make the most of mana. Mana is an invaluable resource in Magic, so commanders that can up your mana go even further are going to be powerful. So the first commander that fits in this bucket that we're going to go over today is Carrick, son of Yawgmoth. Carrick is a 2/2 horror minion with lifelink that costs 4 Phyrexian black, Phyrexian black, Phyrexian black. He has for each black and mana cost, you may pay 2 life rather than pay that mana. And whenever you cast a black spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Carrick, son of Yawgmoth. Many people consider Phyrexian mana to be one of the biggest mistakes in Magic. It essentially helps you cheat on mana cost at the expense of life. In a game like Commander, 40 life is a lot to play with. And not only does Carrick have Phyrexian mana in his cost, but he makes every single one of your black spells have them too. If Carrick isn't immediately dealt with, this can lead to some very early explosive turns. And on top of being able to cheat on a spell's cost, you can also cheat on ability cost too. This can lead to some especially broken plays with abilities that just cost a black. A creature like Blood Celebrant is a great example of this. Blood Celebrant has black, pay 1 life, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Now normally this would just be a way to filter mana, but with Carrick in play, this actually just generates mana itself. For each 3 life that you're paying, you're generating 1 mana. Now this might not seem like a great trade-off, but you've got plenty of ways in this deck to get that life back. And one of the best ways is with Pontiff of Blight. It has extort and gives all your other creatures extort too. So whenever you cast a spell, you can just pay 2 life to extort it instead of paying that black mana cost. If all 3 of your opponents are still alive, you're actually going to be gaining life while draining your opponents. The more creatures that you have in play, the more effective this becomes. And then something like Villas Broker of Blood is basically Carrick's best friend. It says whenever you lose life, draw that many cards, and you can pay black and 2 life, and target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn. So this can be an outlet to lose life, and it can draw you a ton of cards. Again, Carrick is extremely powerful because he helps you easily abuse mana. By helping you cheat on the mana cost of pretty much all your spells and abilities, you can get through your deck extremely quickly and win the game in no time. Phyrexian mana is considered broken for a reason, so a Phyrexian mana commander is just absolutely absurd. But now let's move on to our next commander that makes the most out of mana with Animar, Soul of Elements. Animar is a 1/1 elemental with protection from white and from black, and it costs blue, red, green. It says whenever you cast a creature spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Animar, Soul of Elements. And then creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each +1/+1 counter on Animar. So the more creatures that you cast, the bigger Animar gets, and the less your next creature's cost to cast. So like Carrick, Animar also helps you cheat on mana cost. But Animar specifically focuses on creatures, and it has to be that generic portion of the cost that it's reducing. The thing is, if you only have to spend generic mana to cast your creatures, then this is going to get out of hand quickly. So one way to build around Animar is with morph creatures like Anok, Survivalist. So instead of casting it for its regular cost, you can cast this card face down as a 2/2 creature for 3. So essentially, once Animar has 3 counters on him, all of your morph creatures are free to cast. Animar also works great with artifact creatures and colorless creatures as well. Perhaps the best one in combination with Animar is Ancestral Statue. It has when it enters the battlefield, return a non-land permanent you control to its owner's hand. So essentially you can keep casting and recasting Ancestral Statue since you can have it bounce itself back to your hand. Each time that you cast it, Animar gets another counter, and once it has 4 counters on it, Ancestral Statue is going to be free to cast. So you can do this as many times as you want, making Animar obscenely large. Another card that works really well with Animar is Tidespout Tyrant. It has whenever you cast a spell, return target permanent to its owner's hand. So if you've got 1 morph creature in play and 1 in your hand, you can keep bouncing them back and forth and doing the exact same thing as Ancestral Statue. And in combination with Ancestral Statue, you can actually just bounce everyone else's permanents. Animar can get out of hand really quickly in the right deck. Since it helps you cast your creatures for free or close to free, you can utilize your mana elsewhere. And on top of that, it's a huge threat and it can protect itself. Another cost reduction commander comes with Mizzix of the Izmagnus. She's a 2/2 goblin wizard that costs 2 blue red. She has whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell with converted mana cost greater than the number of experience counters you have, you get an experience counter. And instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each experience counter you have. So the more instants and sorceries that you cast that have higher converted mana costs, the more experience counters you get and the less your spells cost to cast. So with this deck, you're going to be running plenty of instants and sorceries, including some early cantripping cards. A card like Brainstorm can help you get the right cards into your hand when you need them. And then something like Tezzeret's Gambit can really shine in this deck. Because it has Phyrexian mana in its cost, it can essentially cost nothing at a certain point. It draws you 2 cards, which is what this deck wants it to do, and it also helps you proliferate. So there are plenty of times when this card can get you 2 experience counters. And then once you've got a ton of those experience counters, you can cast something like Comet Storm to finish everyone off. X spells are obviously very powerful with Mizzix because of that cost reduction. Again, cost reduction is a very powerful thing and can be easily abused in Commander. Commanders that help reduce the cost of your spells help you utilize that mana elsewhere. This can help you get way ahead of your opponents and do some really powerful plays. Up next is one of my first commanders with Jodah Archmage Eternal. Jodah is a 4/3 flying human wizard that costs 1 blue, red, white. He has you may pay Wooburg rather than pay the mana cost for spells that you cast. Now the other commanders that we've already tackled today are a little more straightforward on how they reduce the cost of your spells. Jodah is going to reduce the cost of certain spells, but only if they cost more than that Wooburg. Now in Magic, there are plenty of expensive spells out there that simply can't fit into most decks because of their cost. In most scenarios, it's just not realistic to get to the amount of mana that you need to cast them all. But Jodah makes it more than worth it to do so. All you have to do is focus on ramping and fixing your mana, and then those big spells will do the rest for you. Now you might only be saving 1 mana on something like Sunbird's Invocation, but it takes advantage of all those huge spells that you cast. It's an enchantment for 5 and a red, and it says whenever you cast a spell from your hand, reveal the top X cards of your library where X is that spell's converted mana cost. You may cast a card revealed this way with converted mana cost of X or less without paying its mana cost, put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So the bigger the spell that you cast, the more options that you have with this. You can also make your big spells even more powerful with something like Swarm Intelligence. It's an enchantment for 6 and a blue, and it says whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you may copy that spell and you may choose new targets for the copy. So let's say that we use Jodah to help us cheat on the mana cost of a 9 mana sorcery. Swarm Intelligence is going to copy that spell, so that's pretty much 18 mana worth of value. But because Jodah let us cheat on the cost, we only have to pay 5 mana for that. And a card like Brilliant Ultimatum can be an all-star in this deck. It says exile the top 5 cards of your library. An opponent separates those cards into 2 piles. You may play any number of cards from one of those piles without paying their mana costs. So this card is extremely powerful, but it doesn't see a lot of play because of its mana cost. Not only does it cost 7 mana, but it also has very specific color requirements. But with Jodah, just having to pay Wooburg is a lot easier than having to pay white, white, blue, 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 black, black. Jodah not only saves us mana on any spell that costs more than 5, but he also can help make spells easier to cast like Brilliant Ultimatum. He gives you access and makes it a lot easier to cast some of the most powerful spells in Magic. But a somewhat similar commander, and one of my personal favorites these days, is Golos Tireless Pilgrim. Golos is a 3/5 scout that costs 5. It has when it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a land card, put that card onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. You can also pay 2 in Wooburg and exile the top 3 cards of your library. You may play them this turn without paying their mana costs. So whereas Jodah helps you cheat on mana costs from your hand, Golos helps you cheat off the top of your library. And if you hit the right things off the top of your library, that cost reduction can be absolutely absurd. Essentially, you're paying 7 mana to spin the wheel. Sometimes you might hit 3 things that aren't worth 7 mana. And other times you might hit 3 things that cost more than 20 mana in total. There are also ways to help guarantee that you can hit what you want to hit. Reclaim is a very simple but effective spell in this deck. It says put target card from your graveyard on top of your library. So the next time that you activate Golos, you're guaranteed to get that off the top. One of the best cards to hit with this deck is Brass's Bounty, because for each land you control, you get to create a treasure. This deck's going to be ramping a ton, so you get a lot of treasure when you cast this. So this can give you 1 or more activations of Golos just on its own. An especially powerful card for this deck to hit is Amanatu's Augury. It's a lot like Brilliant Ultimatum, but slightly different. It says exile the top 8 cards of your library, may put a land card from among them onto the battlefield. Until end of turn, for each non-land card type, you may cast a card of that type from among the exiled cards without paying its mana cost. So again, casting a big spell to cheat on the mana cost of other big spells is a very powerful thing. Now, like Jodah, you need to be focusing this deck on ramping and fixing your mana. But unlike Jodah, you don't need to draw cards to actually cast things from your hand. Golos just helps utilize all your mana by casting things off the top. This makes Golos extremely powerful because he helps you utilize all of your mana. The more that you ramp, the more activations that you get, and the more powerful things that you hit. If you hit the right cards, Golos can get out of control really quickly and put you way too far ahead for anyone else to catch up. And the final commander that we're going to tackle today is the first Sliver. It's a 7/7 Sliver for Wooburg, and it has Cascade and gives all of your Sliver spells you cast have Cascade. Cascade is a very powerful mechanic. It says when you cast this spell, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card that costs less. You may cast it without paying its mana cost, put the exiled cards on the bottom of your library in a random order. So while this doesn't reduce the cost of your spells, it does help you cast a lot of spells for free. Whenever you cast it or any Sliver spell, you're going to be cascading. Once this is in play, this gets out of control really quickly. Now this is going to be a pretty ideal scenario, but just stick with me here. Let's say that you cast a Sliver with a converted mana cost of 4. You start cascading and you hit a Sliver with converted mana cost of 3. You cascade again, hitting a Sliver that costs 2, and then cascading again, hitting a Sliver that costs 1. Now you paid 4 mana for that initial Sliver, but you've got 4 Slivers on the board. That's a total of 10 mana in value that you got for 4. And Slivers are very powerful creatures that are even more powerful when you get more in play. Mana Weft Sliver makes it so that you can cast more and more Slivers by giving Sliver creatures you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. And then other Slivers like Lava Belly Sliver benefit whenever a Sliver hits play. It says Sliver creatures you control have, when this creature enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to target player or planeswalker and you gain 1 life. But perhaps the best Sliver in this deck would be Hibernation Sliver. It has each Sliver gains pay 2 life, return this creature to its owner's hand. So this allows you to bounce and recast your own Slivers to cascade over and over again. The amount of value that cascading can provide you is huge. Like I've shown you today, reducing the cost of spells or letting you cast things for free can be an absolutely busted and powerful thing. There are a lot of ways that commanders go about this, but commanders that help you make the most of your mana are going to be powerful. So when you evaluate a commander, make sure you keep that in mind. But now it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, why don't you let me know what you think makes a commander powerful? And make sure that you're following us on social media for more updates and sneak peeks on future episodes. Links to our social media accounts can be found in the description. Also in the description below is a link to the Commander's Quarters Patreon page, and I just want to say a quick thank you to the patrons who have subscribed so far. There are many benefits to being a patron for the Commander's Quarters, including being able to vote on future commanders for deck techs. There's even a general level tier where you get your own personalized deck tech dedicated to you. I truly couldn't do this without all of your support, so from the bottom of my heart, thank you. If you haven't already, make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel. Here at the Commander's Quarters, we're all about budget commander. So while you're at it, go ahead and check out some of our other types of episodes. And with that, I'm out of here. Thanks again and have a good one.